Did you know that Apple charges a secret $30 fee for their non-pro phones that most people don't know about? Apple is doing some interesting things with their pricing this year, and for those of you who have been around the channel before, you know me. I can't resist analyzing a good pricing strategy. I do it from a business and marketing perspective because that's what this channel is all about. However, if you're simply interested in Apple products, I think you'll find this fascinating too. I'm Logan from Marketing for Normal People, and let's dive into Apple's pricing strategy for the iPhone 16 series. So I have right here the iPhone, or actually the main Apple website up, and so that we can see right here, here's the iPhone 16 Pro, and here is the iPhone 16. Now, intentionally, Apple is keeping their pricing off of this page. And of course, Apple, like any company, they're here to sell you some phones that hopefully solve a problem for you. But make no mistake, they are trying to maximize profits. But that's not at all inherently a bad thing. And as a matter of fact, if you're like other people in our audience, then you want to do that exact same thing too. You want to serve people with your products and services, but you won't be able to do that for many people for very long without focusing on profits. So there are some lessons that we can learn here. So let's actually go ahead. We can, of course, click on Learn More to learn more about the phone, but we can also go ahead and click on Buy. And so let's do that. And then we'll see right here we have, all kinds of different, well, really just two kinds of different options, not all kinds. There are lots of different ways that you can buy phones, but right here we're presented with two options. So we have the iPhone 16 Pro from $999, and then we have the iPhone 16 Pro Max from $1,199. And so that's what we're going to be primarily looking at. I want to look at the base price. However, I will mention again, if you've been around the channel or some of our other training for a while, you know how powerful pricing plan, it's payment plans, letting people pay for something in installments over time. Now, typically, a lot of the people that we teach might sell digital products, and that's a lot safer to do with installment plans because if someone doesn't pay, you can just revoke their access to whatever they got from you. However, when it comes to physical goods, expensive physical goods like a phone, you want to be really, really careful because obviously if someone doesn't end up paying what they said they were going to pay, you can't exactly just, reach through cyberspace and just get the phone back. Legally, maybe you could, but that's a whole hassle and a half of a whole bunch of things. However, it is important to point out that Apple is indeed doing that, and they do have installment plans. So instead of $999, we could pay $41.62 for a 24-month period. And as I'm sure you can imagine, maybe if you're like me, actually, maybe you wouldn't initially imagine this, because I personally, for my finances, I do not like going with installment plans or payment plans. And the reason being is typically there's going to be extra fees or interest or just a higher amount that you're paying overall. And that's because it's less convenient for the company. It's a lot more convenient for Apple to just get $999 from you right up front right here. But for them to offer payment plans and paying over time and installments, that's more for them to keep track of. It's more data, it's more customer service, it's a whole bunch of things. And so it's more complex. And when something's more complex, typically as a business, you want to go ahead and price that in. And so sometimes, in some cases, well, let's actually see. So what is 4162 times 12? Let's see what they're doing here. I'm just going to go to Google and I'm going to type in calculator. All right, so what do we have here? 4162, yes. All right, so 4162 times 24 equals, okay, $998.88. Interestingly, very interestingly, you are actually saving a couple pennies here pretty much. You are saving pennies if you actually go ahead and don't pay in full. That's extremely rare. So the reason Apple does that is because, and Apple's a large enough company that they can cut the losses and have that extra complexity in there. Most smaller businesses, again, charge a little something extra. Even if not, as a consumer, from my angle, it's just more annoying to see money coming out of your account every month. Again, I totally understand that works for a lot of people, and a lot of people buy our products that way, and not saying that doesn't make sense in plenty of cases, but But yeah, overall, just for my personal finances, I like paying upfront, and I promise Apple likes that too. So most companies are going to incentivize paying everything upfront. Apple's not going to in this case, and so that's actually a little unique and something just to pay attention to. So of course we have the iPhone 16 Pro prices right here, and this is what a lot of people focus on when it comes to just kind of iPhone launch season. A lot of people get a little bit more excited about the Pro phones versus the non-Pro phones, and so more people are talking about the Pro phones. But the non-Pro phones are a huge piece to this puzzle. Not only are they very important to think about with Apple's pricing strategy, however, they are just a piece of it. So if we actually go up here to iPhone, you will see that we have the iPhone 16 Pro, which we were just looking at, but then we have the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 15 and the iPhone 14 and the iPhone SE. So these are all the phones that Apple will go ahead and sell you right now. If I click right here on iPhone 14, even though that phone is a couple years old at this point, I can buy an iPhone 14 right now for $599. And then all of these, if I go back to iPhone here, all of these are available to purchase directly from Apple right now. And of course, the cheapest one that they have, which is pretty old at this point, and they're supposed to be coming out with a new one before too long, is the iPhone SE. It definitely has a much more dated look at this point, but the price starts at $429. And so when you're a company as large as Apple, you get the privilege of being like, okay, we can make this product for this kind of customer, and this product for this kind of customer, and this product for this kind of customer, and this product for this kind of customer. And of course, way back when iPhone launches were just like the biggest thing in the world, and you had lines for Apple for the Apple Store, just super, super, super long lines, people camping out overnight just to get the new iPhone. Back during that crazy hype, all the crazy iPhone hype of yesteryear, Apple didn't have multiple phones that they sold all at once. They didn't have a series of iPhone 16s. They had a couple of iPhone 7s. They had a couple of iPhone 6s. They had one iPhone 4S, one iPhone 4. Back when they did the iPhone 5S. When they did the 5S, they did something with a separate model. But typically when they were starting, it was always just, okay, we have one new model. But what they would do is they would discount the model from years prior, and they can also do that a little bit cheaper because the components inside the phone are going to be a little bit cheaper. They're also maximizing their R&D costs because they already spent all this R&D to make that phone, so they're getting more use out of that. Anyway, there's lots of business reasons why over time it makes sense to lower your prices, even though it's the exact same device that you were selling at a higher price before. So that's what Apple used to do. They used to have, okay, the new iPhone comes out, now we'll make the old iPhone cheaper, and they might sell a couple years back of older iPhones. But now there's a lot going on with their pricing strategy because they're still kind of doing a version of that. So if we go right here to iPhone, they're still selling you the iPhone 14, the iPhone 15, the iPhone 6, or of course the iPhone 16 is new one. But anyway, so they're still going back 2 years. But the iPhone SE isn't just an old phone. It's not the iPhone 13. The iPhone SE is specifically made to be a budget model. And so basically something for consumers right at the low end of the spectrum. People who just, their phone broke, they need the cheapest thing they can get, but they want it to be an iPhone. That's what people can get. But similarly, it used to be, if you were getting the iPhone 7, if you were getting the iPhone 6, if you were getting the iPhone 6S, things like that, you were getting the top of the line iPhone. But of course now, and really it kind of started back at the 10 phone, but that's something we don't need to get into right now. If you've been following Apple for a while, you know what I'm talking about. But the important thing is it's evolved into a situation where there are now Pro phones and base phones. And so basically, Apple is now squishing that strategy down into the middle of their lineup. So again, 14, 15, 16. And also, a little thing to point out is like these phones don't have the fancy website anymore. The website's gone. Before they got rid of the iPhone 15 website, I did do a whole review of it. And so that's on the channel. So if people can check it out that way at least. But for the purposes of a consumer actually looking at it, the website is gone. But of course, so they're focusing on the iPhone 16 Pro and iPhone 16. The majority of their sales are going to be there because if people are wanting a new phone, most people are going to jump to one of these two. If people are really, really price conscious, they're going to jump to these. So I don't have the actual sales numbers in front of me, but as a marketer with what I've done in business, my guess would be that they're selling substantially more of the iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Pro compared to any of these. And then they're selling a handful of the iPhone SE, and they're probably selling more of the iPhone SE compared to the 14 and 15 at this point. Part of the reason for that, and part of the reason why it gets tricky and puts Apple in a unique spot, is because Apple has to compete with themselves from whatever they put out last year. They have to make something better and potentially keep it at a similar price point. But Apple's also playing a game, of course, with competitors. So you have all kinds of different competitors. Here's Samsung, and so Apple, needs to play competitive pricing games based on what other competitors are doing. But Apple also has to play competitive pricing games with their used market. So once an iPhone gets out into the world, someone's allowed to resell that, and that could be helpful because then they can get more cash to buy their next iPhone and all that kind of stuff. But you can get used iPhones on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, all kinds of things. But Amazon has typically relatively good prices, a little bit higher than eBay, but it's a lot easier to do returns on Amazon. So you have they're Apple themselves with their new phones. They're competing with themselves on the used market and things like that too. Different people are going to want different things. You might want a brand new phone, but you might be willing to get one of the newer models at a discount because it's used versus new. And anyway, so with a market this big, there's all kinds of pricing considerations that Apple has to play. However, their main concern, and so I'm saying that because the context of their pricing is they're always thinking about this in the back end, and they're going to be raising prices and occasionally lowering prices. But typically, if they're lowering prices, it's by coming out with a cheap model like the iPhone SE. Anyway, that's basically the overarching picture of what Apple is trying to consider. But again, if you're actually just browsing the website, they're focusing on the iPhone 16 Pro, the iPhone 16. If you go into an Apple store, all the displays, almost all the displays, are going to be iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Pro. So what are they doing with pricing with those phones? That's the backbone of their pricing strategy, and everything else will kind of ripple out from there based on what they're doing. So let's go ahead and let's look here, because we already looked at the iPhone 16 Pro. And so here we have $799 for the 16 and $899 for the 16 Plus. So it's very interesting because people who want a large phone, it's only $100 more to get the large phone. But then the interesting thing is, as we just saw on the page we were on previously, $999 for the Pro iPhone. So, in most cases, it's like, okay, if I only spend $100 more, I get a way nicer iPhone. However, you're going back down in size. So that's where the real question becomes, okay, how much does size matter to people? I could go on and on about how this is different from kind of what they're doing with the MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros, and there's other companies that have all kinds of different strategies. Because in many cases, it's interesting, like Apple is very much banking on size. And this is $799. It's only $200 more to upgrade to the iPhone 16 Pro. However, compared to this, $899, it is $300. Let's go back to the iPhone 16 Pro here. Okay, we'll pull that up. Give me the buy button. Waiting for the animation. Okay, there's our buy button. And so, all right, so then the iPhone 16 Pro Max is $1,199. And so that is $300 more than the base iPhone 16 Plus. So a lot of customers, like, that's going to be one of the biggest things that they're thinking about. Do I want a big iPhone or a small iPhone? And it's interesting, a lot of the reviews, a lot of people have been talking about how this year for the average consumer, it feels a little bit like Apple or like a lot of customers are more willing to go with the lower tier phones. And maybe some of that's due to the economy and things like that. But basically, a lot of the important features, a lot of the features that are really important to people, that they feel like they're available on the base phones compared to the more expensive Pro phones. And there's a lot of really cool features on the Pro phones, but I think people are realizing they don't need those as much. So this year in particular, Apple has been finding themselves, their projections for their total sales of the Pro phones, to my understanding, are down a little bit. I can go ahead and include an article that dives into this a little bit deeper down below in the description. But anyway, it's just interesting that they have this set at $1,199, which is a $200 price jump between these two, compared to the $100 price jump between the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Plus. However, there is a catch. There is a catch with that. Actually, if we go, do I have it up here? Yes. So if we go here, you'll see I have the iPhone SE up, but let's go back to the iPhone 16. Let's do that. And so you'll notice, let's find storage down here. Let's see what we got. I assume they'll talk about storage, right? That's a thing they'll do. Yes. So you'll see that in terms of pricing, the iPhone 16 starts at 128 gigabytes. The iPhone 16 Pro starts at 128 gigabytes. And then the iPhone 16 Pro Max starts at 256 gigabytes. So if you actually compare the pricing for $256 or gigabytes, it's only $100 different. So this is very unique, and it was actually last year with the iPhone 15 series that Apple did this for the first time. But to my knowledge, it is with the iPhone 16 or 15 Pro series, that is the first time that they have ever done something different with their Pro phones and with the Pro Max phones and the smaller Pro phones, in terms of their storage capacity. There's been other differences before a little bit with them, but that's the first time that they ever differentiated storage capacity, and they made the Max, and they gave the Max a $200 price gap instead of a $100 price gap. Ever since they've been doing Pro phones, they came out with the iPhone 10 back in, I believe, 2017, and that was the first time that they had the $999 price point. Then they had a Max version of that, and then that was at the $1,099 price point. And so basically, what they did last year, and with inflation and other stuff going on, this was a way, and also the Pro Max, to my understanding, is typically does outsell the Pro. More people are interested in the Pro Max than the Pro. So this was a way for Apple to increase the price without increasing the price, because really the 256 is comparable here. But so on the one hand, this definitely makes sense on Apple's end. It gives them a reason to increase the price, and everyone, and by everyone I mean definitely me, but I also saw different rumors and different things online. A lot of people were very much expecting them, because they kind of made the move last year with the iPhone 15 Pro series. A lot of people were expecting them this year to go up to $1,099 and also drop the 128 gig and go to just 256 for this price point. So it's not like they're raising the price, because it's the same price as it was before for this same amount of storage. So anyway, people were expecting them to jump here, but maybe because the economy is having trouble, I don't know why. I certainly expect them to do that at some point. Before all too long, the Pro phones will likely not have that storage discrepancy, and they'll probably both have the same amount of storage. But yeah, right now they are keeping the 128 gigabyte model in play. And so it sort of makes sense. The real trick is, again, I understand from Apple's end, the real trick is it's just very confusing for a consumer, because it's like you have to keep track of the different upgrades you're getting along the way for each phone, and there's not a ton different between the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Plus. But yeah, once you introduce the Pro and then the Pro Max, it's like it becomes not very simple. And the simpler you can make it for your consumers, for your customers, typically, the better the buying experience is going to be, and the more willing people are going to buy, because they understand it. People are more willing to buy what they feel like they understand. And when things get confusing like this, people are a little less willing to part with their money because they aren't as sure if they're getting a good deal. That's the other thing. People want to feel like they're getting a good deal of some kind. And if things are confusing, people are going to be less likely to think that they are getting a good deal. All right, one other thing that I want to show you, which is very interesting. Again, there's a lot, like I showed you, that there's pricing plans. You can do like installment plans over time, and that helps make the price feel cheaper, even though it's not. But yeah, I definitely understand why that makes sense on Apple's end. So I'm going to go ahead and go through their little portal right here. I'm going to choose the iPhone 16 Pro. I'm going to get Desert Titanium. And then let's look at the 128 gig here. So I click on that, and now I'm going to scroll down, and then we don't have a trade-in. Trade-ins can also make it feel cheaper, even though traditionally trade-ins are one of the worst ways to get the maximum amount of money from your phone. Typically selling it privately or selling it through eBay or something like that will get you a little bit more money. But this is a lot more convenient for people. So anyway, but we're going to select no trade-in. All right, now you can see, here's our options. We can buy for $999. We can finance for $41.62, or we can go ahead and we can do the iPhone upgrade program, which is a little confusing. Again, you don't want to confuse your customer, but they have $49.91 for 24 months. But it includes the option to upgrade to a new iPhone every year, versus this, which is also for 24 months. Anyway, it's a little, I don't want to get into it right now. Maybe I can make a separate video about the iPhone upgrade program compared to just financing it. But regardless, it's a little confusing for the consumer again. So this is just very straightforward. Just buy it for $999. Great. And then you can select your carrier. So we have a couple different carriers down here. We got Boost, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. And then you can also have it unlocked, and you can connect to any carrier later. And I want to mention this because typically, something that I don't know that enough people think about is that you want one thing that makes an iPhone valuable, I mean, just like, up here with the trade-in, is the resale value of the phone. iPhones have had some of the best resale value over the years compared to Android phones. And so that actually, if I can buy a phone today for $1,000 and sell it 2 years later for $500, then my net cost, the money that I'm out at that point, is $500. However, if I buy an Android phone for $1,000 and then sell it 2 years later for $300, now my net cost, the money that I truly lose for that whole purchase, is $700. And so Android phones, and maybe that'll change over time, but Android phones do typically have a little bit less of the resale value. They depreciate faster than iPhones do. So in and of itself, that actually makes the net cost of an iPhone cheaper for people who buy iPhones versus Android. However, along those same lines, one thing that also increases your resale value is having it unlocked. They're saying connect to any carrier later. What that means is it's unlocked. And so typically I advise people to always get it like this, because you're not locked into something with a carrier, but also it helps your resale value. Phones that you sell that are unlocked and can be used with any carrier are worth more on the used market compared to a phone that is locked to AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon or something like that. So even if you're definitely going to just put it on AT&T anyway, I always encourage people to get the phone unlocked, because it's unlocked, because it's not locked into a particular carrier, that literally makes it worth more money. And so again, these are things that you kind of need to buy and sell a few iPhones to understand. And so for the average consumer who hasn't perhaps done that before, that is confusing. But it's all the same price, but this is actually the most valuable option to select. Now, here's what I want to show you. If we go to the iPhone 16, and let's do the same exact thing. Let's go ahead and click on buy, and let's look at their options, because there's a difference here that I want to show you. I'm going to click on the iPhone 16. I'm going to click on the blue color. I do like the ultramarine. I do like that color. All right, we'll do the 128 gigabytes, and then we will go ahead and select no trade-in, and then we will click on buy. And then down here, you will notice something a little bit different. For whatever reason, and Apple's actually been doing this for a little while now. This isn't the first year that they've done this. But Apple, because again, connect to any carrier later is more valuable. But for their base model phones, they will charge you $30 more to have it unlocked versus $30 less to lock it to a carrier. So that's very interesting because basically it's almost like a little extra tax for, it's not literally a tax because taxes come from the government, but some people think of Apple as so big, like the Apple tax for their App Store and stuff like that. So people kind of call them taxes, and you can kind of think of it that way. So this is almost like a little tax for people who don't want to lock it into a carrier. And part of the reason, from my understanding, that they do that is because Apple has partnerships with these different companies, and that makes sense. We have partnerships with companies, and so it makes sense that there's incentives. But basically, AT&T likes it more, obviously, if you lock it to AT&T, and T-Mobile likes it more if you lock it to T-Mobile. And Apple typically has different deals and different things worked out with different carriers. So Apple, in most cases, like this is part of the reason that this is so valuable, the connect to any carrier later, is because it gives you freedom and it gives you choice, which is less valuable to Apple and their carrier partners. So in this case, they're charging more money for it. And I don't like that because I wish that they framed it as, hey, you can, and I know they're saying from $799 here, and that also means, you can upgrade it with storage and stuff like that. But really, I don't like that because I wish that it was like, okay, if you lock it into a carrier, well, fine, we'll give you a $30 discount. But I feel like the unlocked version should just be the base price of what it is. But instead of that being $799, they actually will, they'll actually charge more. I wish they were charging less to lock it with a carrier. Anyway, that's something annoying and something to watch out for. Again, if I were going to purchase an iPhone 16, I would still, even with the $30, I would still choose this because I don't want to be locked into a carrier. I want freedom, and I can often get a better deal if I switch carriers and things like that. And maybe I will stay on the same carrier for 2+ years, but I don't know that for sure. And I want to not be locked in. I want to have the option. So in my mind, the $30 is worth that. But again, it's interesting, and it's almost like a perk. It's an unannounced, something they don't really talk about, but it really is like a perk of the Pro phones. And maybe the average customer who buys a Pro phone understands this a little bit more, and so Apple doesn't want them to feel taxed in the same way. But Apple, basically, if you get a Pro phone, that's like a little benefit or a feature that you get by actually buying the Pro model, is you don't have to pay that tax. And so anyway, it's one advantage to the Pro, but obviously it's more expensive to begin with. So you can take that or leave that for what you will. Now, speaking of, partner offers, they are mentioning here that you're still eligible for carrier financing from Boost Mobile C Deal. And so there's a special deal right here with a $30 connectivity discount and something from $0 over 36 months with carrier deal. So basically it's like, all right, I'm not looking at all the terms here, but typically with these kinds of carrier deals, it's like, all right, if you're a new customer and you buy into their phone plan for a certain period of time, they'll subsidize your phone price. And so you might be able to get it almost for free. At least that's what this looks like. I'm sure the terms might say differently. But yeah, Boost, okay, infinite access plan for $65 a month. See, that's why because the price of a phone isn't just the price of a phone. The price of the phone is also the service that you are paying for that phone. $65 a month, that is a lot of money, kids. And I ain't paying anywhere close to that amount with my monthly bill. We use Mint Mobile at the moment. And again, I'm unlocked, so I liked the fact that we could switch. But hey, if you want more information about Mint Mobile, I'll include links down in the description as well. So Anyway, so but what I do want to highlight is from a business perspective, that is a very good move to be like, hey, like let's let people have, um, let's let people get some incentives, but I guarantee you they have something fancy worked out with Boost. And again, nothing wrong with that. I think that, where you can partner with other companies to help increase profitability, as long as it's a win for the consumer, it's because yeah, I don't love the idea of people paying $65 a month, but a lot of people are going to pay $65 a month anyway. And so anyway, if you're the kind of person who is going to pay $65 a month, then this could make sense for you. All right. The other important thing, of course, they're upselling you. Technically, the way I would term this is they're order bumping. So let's go ahead and click this. And then Apple's not just making money just from their phones. They're making money from Apple Care. Because most of the time, the reason that Apple offers Apple Care is, yes, it does help people in certain situations, but typically, most people don't use the Apple Care. And that's why most customers who buy Apple Care, they're going to spend $149 or they're going to spend $219. And for most people, not everybody, but for most people, Apple's going to pocket that money. And for people who do need a repair or something like that, Apple already charged you $149 or $219. So even if Apple, if it costs them on the back end like $319 to service the phone, they're not out that much money. So this is a very profitable thing for them. And so as you can see, again, we call this an order bump offer, where they're encouraging you to buy something extra before the checkout process. And so, so by all means, like, this is a great strategy, but it is a way for them to make some extra money. I typically don't do Apple Care, but I understand it does make sense for certain people. I will fully acknowledge that. Anyway, now we can go ahead and click add to bag. And then, once again, we can review the bag, but once again, they're basically order bump because, again, we haven't put it on our checkout, our payment information, but they're encouraging us to buy accessories. So Apple's making money on the phone. Apple is making money on Apple Care, their warranty. But then Apple's also making money on accessories. And then Apple is making money when you actually buy the phone. You might do something like get Apple Music or subscribe to Apple TV Plus. You're probably going to pay for some iCloud. And then anytime you buy any sort of app at all, any sort of third-party app, like I mentioned, that Apple tax, they charge developers. Typically, there's some ways around it for small developers, but most developers are paying 30% of what you're paying as a consumer, what you're paying every single month. 30% of that goes to Apple. So Apple, really the amount of money, the amount of revenue that they're taking in on average per iPhone sale is a lot more than this upfront cost. And that's why it works out perfectly well for Apple too. Even if I were to go to Amazon and I were to buy this iPhone 13, which has the same exact amount of storage, by the way, as a brand new iPhone 16. So for the iPhone 16, I could pay $799 for the base model, or you could get an iPhone 13 for $397. And so, of course, there's plenty of reasons why an iPhone 16 is more desirable than an iPhone 13. However, we're talking literally half the price. If the iPhone 16 is $800, this is $400. And so for half the price, how many of those iPhone 16 features do you really need? Anyway, that's how a consumer might think. But it works out for Apple because, A, it helps keep their resale value high, and people consider that when they're buying the new phones. But again, like I mentioned, just the fact that Apple has services on the back end, just the fact that Apple has iCloud and Apple Music and Apple TV Plus and Apple Arcade and that kind of stuff, and that they get a fee for everything that you buy from the App Store, even for people who buy straight from Amazon, Apple still has the potential to make money from that customer. And it goes in cycle because they initially made money when someone bought that phone brand new, and now they can make more money from a new customer when someone buys it used, and the cycle goes on and on and on. And the person who buys that iPhone 13, there's a good chance that they might need some accessories, cables, who knows what. So there's lots of pieces. The pricing strategy is a lot more complex than just like, hey, here's the phone, here's the price. Apple is offering upsells and order bumps, and and they're expecting people to buy things after the fact. And also, if they're getting a sale here, then they're keeping that customer away from a competitor. And so all that stuff matters, and all that is a big deal. Hopefully, Apple over time is going to be able to keep their prices low. A few years ago, again, they switched to the iPhone Max, the iPhone Pro Max starting point. The starting price for the iPhone, oh my goodness, tongue twister. The iPhone Pro Max, the starting price went up $100 back when they released the iPhone 15 series. But they also, when they had the mini phone, they had the 12 mini and the 13 mini. That was $100 cheaper than, like you could get a mini phone for $100 less than what you can get the base model like iPhone 16 now. And so when they came out with the Plus phones, that was kind of another way for them to raise the price $100. So over time, we have indeed been seeing the iPhone prices get higher and higher and higher. But Apple's game here still is, okay, like how do we get people to ultimately spend as much money as possible, and in a way that they'll enjoy and find value in. Apple is trying to build a long-term brand here, and they know that if people buy something that they don't find value in and they don't use, then they're not going to want to buy again. And it's very, very important to Apple that you want to buy again. So they have this whole little ladder here where, we start on the iPhone. Where were we? Well, yeah, I mean, you really start at, if you're thinking about getting a new iPhone, you might think here, but it's like, oh, okay, for only a little bit more, I can get the iPhone 14. Oh, for a little bit more, I can get the iPhone 15. For a little bit more, I can get the iPhone 16. For a little bit more, I can get the iPhone 16 Plus, but then for a little bit more, I could get the iPhone 16 Pro. And as nice as it would be if it was a $100 price difference here, once you're at that price point, realistically, from a business perspective, a lot of customers are going to be perfectly fine to pay $200 if the iPhone 16 Pro Max is the phone that they really want to get. So there's a lot going on. That's a pretty extensive deep dive. And, as I'm sure you can tell, there's so many more angles that we could go into with this. There's so many more things that we could talk about. But maybe I'll make some more videos down the line. Feel free to leave a comment if you'd like to see something along those lines. And again, I did actually, I already went into a lot of the other marketing aspects behind a lot of these phones because they're brand new. And I wanted to check out the marketing, the websites, and actually see what Apple's doing, not just on a pricing level, but also just how they're presenting the phones, how they're making them enticing, and different lessons that you can learn as you go and market your own products. So anyway, if you are in the market for a new iPhone, do be careful out there. Again, I don't think Apple is trying to be nefarious by any means, but there are ways that you can be a smart consumer, and there are ways that there are ways to waste money. And so anytime you buy a phone or really anything of any importance, make sure that you're doing at least some level of research to make sure that you're making an informed purchase. So be careful. But like I said earlier, pricing is only one of the tools that Apple is using to sell these phones. And I did do a deep dive on so many Apple products and Apple's marketing strategies that it's using on its website. So you can click right here to see one of those. And as always, if you want my free marketing crash course where I cover the new fundamentals of modern marketing that drive awareness, grow an audience, and get people to buy from you, go to marketingfornormalpeople.com or click or scan right here. All right, catch you later.